A strong, inactive MJO dumps fuel on La Nina. I am Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, November 24th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people. All the time, no hype.
If you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. That'll get you all signed up. You'll get automatic notifications when the videos post, typically on Sunday evenings. If you have a question or comment, write it up down below. We'd be happy to respond. And if you'd like to make a small contribution to the cause, you may. Hit the super thanks button down below, the heart with the $sign on it. With that, I'd like to thank the folks that donated last week. Clay Goose, Coach Nate, Our Predicament, and Pre-Plan 1. Thank you all so much. And with that, let's get to work. We'll start by looking at significant wave heights across the planet. In the North Pacific, not a whole lot going on for the moment, though it has been pretty active near shore relative to California, but things quieting down. But down south, believe it or not, a gale, the actual second in a series developing under New Zealand. Really late in the year for that. Over the Indian Ocean, a solid, believe it's even a storm with near 40-foot seas, we'll say 39-foot seas, pushing swell towards Western Australia and maybe some sideband energy up into the Mentawai Islands and the Bali area. And then another system developing in the far North Atlantic, almost the Barents Sea, with 34, 35-foot seas. Another little system also off the northeast U.S. coast, producing 24-foot seas, but all aimed away from shore. All right, let's go look at current conditions. We'll start up in Washington, really northern Oregon, off of the Columbia River, Grays Harbor, buoy number 036. We're looking at all the wave energy currently hitting that buoy. Not a whole lot, a little tiny spike of 14-second energy at 0.4 of a foot. No big deal there. And then wind swell, 2.5 feet roughly at 9 seconds in that one band. But what comprises a swell is all the energy under the curve in the vicinity of wherever the peak is. So you put it all together, primary swell, 4.4 feet at 8.2 seconds from 219 degrees. That's surf theoretically at 3.6 feet. It's actually a little bigger than that. Maybe head high, something like that. And then some secondary swell, 0.7 feet at 13 seconds from 233 degrees. Probably just short period chop. That's surf height of 1 foot. And the chop height, 1.8 feet. So that's not too bad. Not as bad as it was down in California a couple of days ago. Then we head down to Northern California, Point Reyes buoy number 029 off of, you guessed it, Point Reyes, California, just north of the Golden Gate there. Same deal, looking at all the energy hitting the buoy all the way up from 33.3 second period, super long period energy, down to 5 second period, pure wind chop. Little bump of energy, 1.2 feet at 14 seconds there, and then a bunch of wind swell all mixed in. You put it together, let's see what the algorithm comes up with. 5 feet at 6 seconds from 192 degrees is the biggest swell in terms of making surf, 3 foot, with secondary swell energy, 2.3 feet at 12.7 seconds from 236 degrees, theoretically making surf 1/10 of a foot smaller, 2.9 feet. So in general, a pretty not great surf situation. The chop height, 3.2 feet. Again, that's and from 172 degrees. That's all the energy from 2 to 5 seconds. So in general, just really junky wind swell, and that's exactly what it looks like. Then we go to Southern California, the Point Loma South buoy, number 191 off of San Diego, California. Same deal, a little bump of energy here at 13 seconds, another little bump at 9 seconds. The primary swell, 2.9 feet at 8.7 seconds from 273 degrees. That is making surf 2.5 feet. That is purely wind swell from low pressure that's just been sort of pounding mainly the Northern California coast. Secondary swell, 1.9 feet at 13 seconds from 216 degrees. So some background southern hemi swell making surf 2.5 feet. But there were chest high, shoulder high sets at top spots coming from the south, at least this morning. And the chop height, well, because it's all protected by the Channel Islands, not bad, 1 foot. And we head over to the north shore of Oahu, Waimea Bay buoy, number 106. Finally, something that looks legit and real. Nice little clump of energies here strung between 18 seconds down to about 9 or 10 seconds, something like that. Primary swell, 6.3 feet at 12.4 seconds from 330 degrees. Surf from primary swell, 7.8 feet. And there is definitely waves on the Hawaiian Islands. Not huge, but at least it's real swell and with decent conditions. Chop height, a 0.6 of a foot, so not bad. And then the typical kind of northwest or northerly wind swell, 2.7 feet at 9.4 seconds from 342 degrees. Coming in was surf height at about 2.5 feet, so not really a whole lot there. So let's do a quick review of what has been happening the past week across all the planet's oceans. We'll start in the North Pacific. We're back Tuesday, November 19th. This gale started winding up. This was, at least in the United States, if you saw any of the weather forecasts or the news, atmospheric river slamming into Northern California, driven by this low here, the jet. When we get into that, you'll see it pushed right into Northern California. Good amounts of precipitation there down to about the San Francisco Bay area. And then there was a hard line, and it really didn't make it any further south than maybe the south end of the San Francisco Bay area. Anyway, swell from that was just big and blown out and a pure mess. Here we are on Friday, though. Another gale pushed off Japan with 35-foot seas. Let's go back and see. Yep, 35. These are the high, right down here, highest seas over this entire domain. Aimed pretty well at the Hawaiian Islands. That swell now on Sunday, you can barely see it. It's actually starting to hit the Hawaiian Islands. That's what you're seeing on the buoys there, and that will continue for a day or so. But of a little more interest, on Monday, the 18th of November, a gale developed southeast of New Zealand with 29-foot seas building to 30 feet. I think we got a little bit more out of it. There's 32 feet, 35 feet, 37 feet on Tuesday, the 19th of November. Now, this was pretty much east of the Hawaii swell window, so nothing expected for Hawaii. But swell from this is radiating north. You can see it as it went into about Wednesday, then it pushed east of even the Southern California swell window. But swell from it is pushing up. You can see the line of it here, pushing up towards California. I think it's expected midweek, mainly, I would say, Southern California, but even Northern California, select south-facing breaks will see surf from it. And of course, down into Chile, Peru, and Mexico. We'll just roll this out to take a look and see if there is anything else after that, but the answer is no. And there we are current, but here comes another one behind it. We'll get into that in the forecast. Going over to the North Atlantic, a series of systems have been pushing off the U.S. northeast coast, mainly producing west winds, offshore winds. It does nothing really for generating swell, but there has been some activity. Most of these systems, they're trying, there we go, you see it trying to push into Europe. Now this thing actually, there you go, 41-foot seas. That was very early this morning. Not really aimed at the U.S. East Coast and too far away. Not really aimed at Europe proper, though. Sideband swell, I'm sure, is going to reach eventually down into that area there. Will get us to current, and there we are. You can see certainly for Portugal and Morocco and that area, swell likely. And probably, given just the local nature of it, there's some sort of wind swell also pushing into Central Europe. We go to the South Atlantic over the past week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 20th. Not a whole lot going on. It's been fairly quiet there. And here we are into Sunday, current time. Not a whole lot happened or has happened there. But we go to the Indian Ocean, we'll roll through this. You'll see something that will catch your eye here as we push into this Friday, Saturday. Here we go. Something started to develop on Saturday, building into early Sunday with 37-foot seas. Let's see if we got a higher 40 feet. And we got one more frame here, 39.5 feet. This certainly looks capable of producing maybe sideband swell up into here, but for Western Australia, Southern Australia for sure, looks like longer period swell is on the way. So what's to come? We're going to do a deep dive in the North Pacific and then a shallower dive for the rest of the planet's oceans. We're going to start looking at the Jetstream. Jetstream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales when those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet, and you kind of see it like right there, but not really so much. And you do see another one right there. That helps create a counterclockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And of course, low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Those winds get traction on the ocean surface, generating seas. As those seas radiate away from the fetch area, they eventually, the lesser period elements, decay off, exposing long period swell, and swell when it hits your beach turns into surf. We've had this persistent, what they call a backdoor trough. The jet goes up like this, down, and then bulges off the Pacific Northwest coast and British Columbia, dragging cold air with it and moisture as well, normally quite good for snow production. That's exactly what's been going on in the Pacific Northwest down into Mount Hood and Mount Bachelor, and now even down into the Sierra, there is snow there. We'll get into all that in a minute. But as we move forward, you also see that the jet was a bit split here in the east. Not great for storm production. You really want the jet more consolidated, like it is right here. Forecast on Monday, winds 150 knots in the jet, but no real troughs yet. But as we get into Tuesday, 26th of November, there is a nice trough developing there. Another trough is forecast off the U.S. West Coast, but not with a lot of wind energy in it compared to this one here with 140 knot winds. This looks to be a better swell producer. And then you get into Wednesday, and that just looks like a really nice trough, really good supporting that counterclockwise flow aloft. That should be supportive of some kind of a gale development where you have this much weaker, kind of fragmented looking trough off California. The trough over the dateline continues into Thursday and Friday. Additional energy. Look at the jet here, all consolidated, 170 knot winds pushing into it. Into Friday, the 29th of November, possibly helping set something else up here in the northwestern Gulf of Alaska into Saturday. That fades out, and then another trough is forecast behind that on Sunday, the 1st of December, over the dateline again. That seems to be the magic place for storm and gale development, so we'll see what materializes. But from a jet stream perspective, the jet, relatively consolidated, all down between 35 and 40 north, not looking too bad at all. So that's upper level. Let's go take a look down at the ocean surface. Surface level pressure, surface level winds, remnants of what was a bomb cyclone still circulating off the Pacific Northwest, but pressure way up to like 1,004 millibars. Spurious other low pressure activity, but nothing. I mean, you really need at least 35 knot winds to support, building decent seas. And here we go. We're into later Tuesday. Small area 45 knot winds wind up, continuing, and then building in coverage from 35 to 45 knots, even 50 knots as we get into Wednesday. That would be storm class winds generating seas and targeting initially Hawaii, but also the U.S. West Coast. We're into Thursday. That low continues, that gale low continues, and finally fades out later on Friday. We know there's another trough forecast, and here we go as we get into late Saturday, Sunday, 40 knot winds. See if we can squeeze a little more out of that on Sunday, and we do. Not as big as the previous low, but starting to look a little bit better. Let's go see the effect of those winds on the ocean surface. So here we are, 18Z on Sunday. First gale we would expect sometime on Wednesday. Actually, on Tuesday it starts winding up with 25-foot seas building. But then as we get into Wednesday morning, tiny area of 31-foot seas. That building, though, and this run of the model is better than any run so far, showing a broader area of 36-foot seas, building to 39 feet Wednesday night, aimed somewhere between Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast, and then pushing off to the east still with 39-foot seas late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. That'd be the 28th of November, Thanksgiving time for those in the U.S. And then the gale fading from there, fading out late Thursday into Friday. You can see the projected swell front approaching the Hawaiian Islands and the U.S. West Coast. Most size, just given the fact that this system is closer to the Hawaiian Islands, would be, like north-facing shores of Oahu and Kauai, and lesser size, but more groomed out as it approaches the U.S. West Coast. We'll put this into motion and see there is another system, theoretically a week out on Sunday, the 1st of December, with 26-foot seas building to 29 feet over a far smaller area, falling southeast, targeting the Hawaiian Islands pretty well. So theoretically, a good run of surf for Hawaii, because there's two gales that have pushed towards the islands and another two forecast with energy eventually reaching the U.S. West Coast. And then we go to the southern hemisphere. We already have had one gale down there that's produced swell that's pushing north towards the U.S. West Coast, and then another gale starting to develop. But as we get into early Monday, here we go, 34-foot seas aimed off to the northeast, building to 35 feet, and that's about it, 35-foot, but still 35-foot seas in practically December. And that's the second such gale of similar size in the same area. That is a little bit of a miracle. We'll take it. Southern hemi swell, if you can't get it out of the north, take it out of the south, especially for Southern California. And this one should produce swell radiating into the south shore of the Hawaiian Islands and, of course, Tahiti. After that, though, another gale tries to organize on Thursday, Thanksgiving, with 29-foot seas up to 30 feet. Again, this should do well for Tahiti and the Hawaiian Islands and possibly the U.S. West Coast. It's still, 6 days out, something like that. So this is probably a bit overhyped. Wow. In fact, this is brand new on the models. I didn't even see this. 33-foot seas now over a tiny area, but again, take what you can get before the thing falls south into Antarctica. So a little bit of hope for the southern hemi very, very late in the season. Looking at the North Atlantic, same sort of pattern that's been going on. These storms just pushing off the northeast coast of the U.S., targeting Europe, but the interesting part is the fetch, they're not really winding up. They're not driving like strong fetch into this area as one would expect. Maybe it's still a little bit early in the season. Just based on the way things are going, we're 6 or 8 weeks behind schedule, or maybe just given the way the atmosphere is, we're not behind schedule. This is just the way our winter is going to play out. We're going to talk a bit about that in a while when we get into the long-term forecast. Quick look at the South Atlantic. We'll just roll the wave model out here. Significant wave heights is what we're looking at. The highest 1/3 of all waves in the ocean. And we went through the whole week and really not a whole lot happening there. Let's go take a look at the Indian Ocean. So here's our gale with 39-foot seas in I'll call it the deep central Indian Ocean, building to 43 feet. And that's about the peak of it. That's literally 6 hours from now. That will definitely set up swell radiating up again in these targets right around in here. Perhaps another system behind? No, not really. But I thought I saw something. There you go. Another system. Here it is with 31-foot seas. And this one lifting well to the north. That previous bigger system pushed pretty much on a straight west-east track. This lifting northeast, targeting Western Australia, Bali, that area really well. So we'll see how this plays out. It also looks, you can see, like nearly 18-foot seas impacting the Perth area as we get a week out from now. Local wind forecast for California. So there's Southern California down here, Point Conception, San Francisco Bay Area, Cape Mendocino up here, Hawaii out in this region. Remnant low pressure still hanging off the Pacific Northwest, driving south winds and pretty choppy, ugly conditions. And still lingering lump and rumble in the water, even into Northern California today on Sunday. Hawaii kind of set up with I'll call it light trades for Sunday. As we get into Monday, notice this north wind vector thing, not strong, but just like 10 knots pushing over the Hawaiian Islands. Again, that southwest wind pattern pushing into spots north of Point Conception. On Tuesday, low pressure tries to develop off the U.S. West Coast. Trades return to the Hawaiian Islands. Winds offshore feeding into, really driven, I think, more by high pressure here, sort of an imbalance between the two. So we get into Wednesday, offshore winds for the U.S. West Coast. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands. We'll get into Thursday, the 28th of November, still an offshore flow for the U.S. West Coast. And some southern hemi swell theoretically arriving as well. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands pretty light. As we get into Friday, same pattern continuing. Trades and offshore winds for California. Into Saturday, same deal again. Generally light wind pattern. And then even more of it as we get into Sunday, both locations, and there we are 180 hours out as low pressure starts building in the Gulf of Alaska. All right, precip we're focusing on the U.S. West Coast and snow in the Sierra. So from this past couple of days, cutoff low, I believe I saw one reading of 20 inches up here in Northern California, and Santa Rosa was in the area of like a foot of rain over a 3-day period. The San Francisco Bay Area proper in the 2 to 3 inch range, but once you got south of San Jose, pretty much nothing, and dry south of there. You can see again some precip forecast moving into I'll call it Central California, pretty light precip as we get into Monday morning, and then some snow for the Sierra through the day Monday. And this is just spotty light precipitation. Tuesday, maybe a little bit more precip focused on Central California. No more snow for the Sierra, nothing earth-shattering. And then by Wednesday, the snow starts filtering out, and I think the precip does too. And then we go high and dry again. Maybe a little smattering of showers on late Thursday into Friday for Central California, and even maybe a touch on Friday night for Southern California, but the models are pretty flaky this far out, so I don't know that I believe any of that. The general pattern is some sort of high pressure trying to set up over the Great Basin with low pressure out off of the Gulf of Alaska. The snow forecast dashboard for Palisades, Tahoe, formerly Squaw Valley, theoretically about 18 inches of snow forecast, and that's pretty consistent for all the Tahoe area locations, all of it happening late on the 25th into early the 26th, adding more. So I think there's about a 3-foot base, mainly above 8,000 feet. Most of the resorts are struggling to get open. I mean, you never open for legitimate real skiing before Thanksgiving, but there is enough snow, it appears. You know, it's a whole different thing to be up there and actually skiing and see how many rocks you hit and that sort of thing. But for right now, things are looking good from an early season perspective in the Tahoe Basin. And then we go to Mammoth, 38, 39 inches of snow forecast, and that's mainly because this next system coming in like Monday, Tuesday, maybe kind of Wednesday-ish, is all focused on Central California. Mammoth is basically due east of Monterey Bay, where Tahoe is further north, like more due east of Bodega Bay. Okay, this system will be a more southerly system. So Mammoth, and the fact that their upper elevation is like 11,000 feet or 11,1, so they'll wring every drop out of that system, and it'll be colder, so more snow possible. Then going back to Palisades, Tahoe, the base of there is 6,200 feet. The top of Granite Chief right at about 9,000 feet, or the Palisades. The blues and whites are freezing temperatures. The gray is sleet, and the red would be liquid precipitation. So right now, freezing levels below the base, forecast to hold into about the morning of the 27th, so that'd be Wednesday. And then you see the freeze line starting to creep up, making it almost up midway up the mountain on Thanksgiving Day, Thursday the 28th, falling back down a little, and then the freeze level up at 10,000 feet as we get into the last day of November, and up to 12,000 feet theoretically after that. So this is, and where the yellow is, that's where snow is likely to occur. So this is probably our last chance for some snow before, one, it dries out, and two, it warms up. All right, so surf spot forecast will start up in the Pacific Northwest Columbia River area. Not a whole lot going on. You see whatever swell there is, it's kind of wind swellish type, fading down to nearly nothing through the week until you get into Saturday and Sunday. This is the forecast arrival of swell from the gale, the bigger gale forecast out on the dateline. I think that's, was it Tuesday through Thursday sort of thing. 10-foot surf, winds out of the east at 10 knots. Not bad at all. Primary swell, 6.6 feet at 16 to 17 seconds. That is solid swell indeed. Then we go down to Northern California. There's this sort of junky wind swell thing going on. Then you get into Wednesday, Thursday. This is actually southern hemi swell here in the 3-foot range. And then you see that same swell projected for the dateline at about 8 feet as we get into, this would be Sunday morning. Surf heights, well, 5 feet at 9 to 10 seconds, fading down. Then you see that 1.7, 1.8 feet at 16 to 17 seconds. Might even be a little bit bigger than that. And then all that getting overtaken by swell of 5 feet at 16 seconds a week from now. Dana Point, California, here's the southern hemi swell, 3.5, 3.7 feet sort of thing. And top spots there will probably be able to add another 50% on top of that. Pretty much going the whole way into the weekend. Swell size, well, initial period 20 seconds and building to 2.1. I think it really maybe more up to 2.3 or a little bit higher than 2.3 feet at 16 to 17 seconds from a pretty much 187 degree, pretty south angle. That does really good in Southern California. And then the swell slowly fading out from there into the weekend. The North Shore of Oahu, our current swell at 6 and producing 6.5-foot surf. That fades down, but then surf heights go up to theoretically 15 feet on Friday, slowly working their way down from there with trades pretty much throughout. That's good news. Surf high or swell heights 5 feet at 12 to 13 seconds. Let's get into Monday morning. There we go. 5 feet at 12 seconds, slowly fading down. Maybe another little pulse of swell right behind that at 4 feet at 12 seconds kind of thing. And then the bigger swell arrives on Friday at 9.5 feet at 16 seconds, fading down into the weekend. So North Shore of Oahu, plenty of surf coming their way and trades in control. Making a quick stop over on the U.S. East Coast, we're going to go to Cocoa Beach, Florida. Surf heights really small and basically continued. Maybe a little bump here next weekend, 1.5 feet with swell heights. What is that? 1.8 feet at 7.5 seconds. So by and large, a pretty calm pattern there with an offshore flow in control. Then we go to the west coast of Australia, Margaret River area, surf height 7 feet, building up to 10 feet as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, and then maybe building up again to the 15-foot range. I'm trying to look around the microphone here as I do this. Surf height or swell height 6 feet at 12 to 13 seconds, building to 6 feet at 16 seconds, and then 10 feet, at 13 seconds, 11 feet at 13 seconds, right at the end of the frame here, all from a rather westerly to southwesterly direction. All right, let's go take a look long-term and what's going on with the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. These two oscillations are the major influences of weather and surf production and rain and snow production for the planet. We're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO. There are two phases to the Madden-Julian Oscillation, the active phase and the inactive phase. The active phase is our friend. It's like a low-pressure system. When it moves, and the two phases, active phase on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other, they rotate around the planet west to east on the equator. When the active phase moves into your ocean basin, it being like low pressure, takes warm, moist air at the ocean surface on the equator, lifts it high up into the atmosphere. That warm, moist air gets caught by the jet stream, both north and south, energizes the jet stream, and helps feed trough production, therefore storms and gales and surf. The inactive phase does basically the exact opposite. It's high pressure. It steals energy from the jet stream. The jet stream gets weak and splits and is not effective at producing storms. All right, so we're looking for signs of the active phase in the Pacific Basin. This is data from the TAOO array, a series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino, East Pacific here, West Pacific here. We're just looking at the arrows. These are 5-day average winds. They give us a hint about the trades. The trades are generated by high pressure circulating in the ocean basins north and south of the equator. If the trades are stronger than normal, that suggests the inactive phase of the MJO. If trades are weaker than normal, or if they reverse, that's signs of the active phase of the MJO. All right, so we're looking at these wind arrows. They're pretty strong out of the east, suggesting at least normal winds. Same thing over the Central Pacific. We go into the West Pacific, trades really strong. But it's not the actual wind speed, it's the anomaly, the difference from normal for this time of year. In the East Pacific, trades just, you see these little baby arrows, maybe just a little bit stronger than normal, no big deal. In the Central Pacific, though, it starts building out of the east. And then you get into the West Pacific, and trades are definitely much stronger out of the east, indicating the inactive phase of the MJO, the portion of the MJO that steals energy from the jet stream. All that said, we know there are storms forecast, and we know there is activity scheduled for the North Pacific. So the MJO is not a hard, just nothing happens when the inactive phase moves over your portion of the planet. But on average, the general trend is storms tend to be less strong, less long. They're not as big as normal, just like El Nino, La Nina. In the Pacific Basin, when you have El Nino, there tends to be more storms. They tend to be stronger, bigger, longer lasting than normal, and better at imparting wave energy to the ocean, creating surf. And then La Nina sort of does the exact opposite. We are in La Nina now, and it appears that we are in the inactive phase or moving towards the inactive phase of the MJO. They work together to steal energy from the jet stream. Here is the forecast for zonal wind anomalies, the east-west component of the wind for the entire planet. The oranges and reds, westerly anomalies, one could loosely associate with the active phase of the MJO, and blues and the dreaded purples, the inactive phase of the MJO. So this is past performance here. The date line, 180, right up the middle is smack in the middle of the Pacific. The far west Pacific starts about 125 east, so right here. When you see the oranges, this would be the active phase of the MJO with its westerly anomalies working its way across the Pacific. And as of a couple of days ago, it was locked south of California. No big surprise that we had a backdoor trough, an atmospheric river, and all that stuff pushing into California, because it was getting great support from the MJO due south of California on the equator. But now that is gone. And look what we have here. Massive easterly anomalies. This is likely a very strong inactive phase of the MJO. It's been on the models for weeks now, and it's forecast to push across the Pacific. Now notice, westerly anomalies over the Indian Ocean, lots of activity there. Hey, we saw on the forecast a gale with like 40+ foot seas in the South Indian Ocean in November, and practically the end of November. No big surprise, this is supporting that. This looks like it's not going to support storm production on a wholesale basis in the Pacific for a while. Now this was supposed to continue off to the east, but the latest run of the models has it back building, filling the entirety of the Pacific, even into the 9th of December. We'll see how that plays out, but none of this looks good. And going along with the title of the video, the inactive MJO pouring gas on La Nina. This just feeds. If La Nina is a high-pressure system over the Pacific and the inactive phase of the MJO is a high-pressure system, the two of them sync up and make a doubly high-pressure system over the Pacific. At least that's the theory. Let's dig a little bit deeper. The upper-level moisture or cloud cover forecast from a statistic model, outgoing long-wave radiation, how much sunlight gets reflected off the ocean surface, radiated back out into the atmosphere. You can, if you have more clouds than normal, those clouds suppress sunlight reflectivity, and you get negative anomalies, these blues. So that would be cloudy. Unless South America, Central America, EQ is the equator, Hawaii is up there, New Guinea there, Australia, Indian Ocean here. So this looks like the active phase of the MJO with its it's sucking warm, moist air up into the atmosphere. It hits cold air aloft, turns into clouds. There you go. And here you have cloud-free skies, high pressure, the core of high pressure, the inactive phase of the MJO in the West Pacific, in the Kelvin wave generation area, I call it, the area from right on the equator, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, right in about this area. So not supportive for gale development. That said, there are gales on the chart, so it's not all over. It's just, not super robust. Now, according to the statistic model here, 5 days out, active phase of the MJO starts seeping into the West Pacific, continuing 10 days out and 2 weeks from now. The dynamic model, well, basically saying the exact same thing. In fact, can I line up the two, these two, probably can't here, not easily, but there we go, sort of, you see it. Active phase, the two models looking pretty similar in their output. Phase diagrams for the same two models, statistic model here, dynamic model here. The active phase of the MJO, and that's all this chart tracks, moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent to the West Pacific. This is on the equator, to the East Pacific, under the United States, over Africa, as it goes across the Atlantic, and then back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot is where the active phase is today. Pretty, the further away from the circle, the stronger it is. So modestly strong active phase in the Indian Ocean. Forecast making it to, we'll say, right about the doorway into the far West Pacific 2 weeks from now, varying from anywhere from modestly strong, we'll say, to very weak. The dynamic model suggests about the same thing, very weak, ready to move into the West Pacific. The upper level model showing areas favorable for precipitation, upper level moisture, South America, Central America, 0 is the equator. Dateline runs roughly there, New Guinea there, and there's 8 panels here, each 5 days further out than the other. So for right now, greens are wet air in the Indian Ocean. Oranges are dry air in the Far East Pacific. Now, this runs about a week ahead of what's actually going on down at the ocean surface because it's upper levels. So the surface drags behind, but kind of a neutral pattern, turning active theoretically on the 29th of November and holding through to about the mid-December, something like that. Another week out, really, till about the 21st of December. Then the inactive phase starts making its way across the Pacific late December into January. This is the CFS model, same deal. The oranges and reds, the westerly anomalies, the active phase of the MJO, the solid black contour literally delineates the active phase of the MJO. You notice the reemergence of the MJO getting stronger with each run of the models here as we get into the fall. I mean, that's typically when the MJO does its best, is in the fall and we'll say the winter months. Summer months, it tends to be weaker. Anyway, you see we went through a pretty good active phase of the MJO with westerly anomalies here back in pretty much the month of October. Here comes our inactive phase of the MJO with very strong easterly anomalies starting now into about a week from now. And this is the inactive phase of the MJO. About a week from now, it's supposed to be over, but notice the persistence of strong easterly anomalies over the dateline. Active phase trying to nose into the far west Pacific at about 125 east starting a week and a half from now. And it was supposed to make headway, but now it just looks like it hits a brick wall and the contours from it go nowhere. And the westerly anomalies, the reds, go nowhere, just barely in the door, getting a toe in the door and not 1 inch further through December 21st. Now here is another rendering of the CFS model, 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies, the yellows, westerly anomalies, the blues, easterly anomalies. Past performance down here, the forecast is on the top part of the chart in this rendering. The date line runs right up the middle. The blues, easterly anomalies. You see those very strong easterly anomalies push now fully in control of, well, the far west Pacific starts at 125 east, so right about there. The area we're interested in goes up here to about 170 west right here. Inactive phase of the MJO, it looks like in control into at least mid-December, then weakening while pushing east, while the active phase of the MJO, though strong in the Indian Ocean, slowly by about Christmas time makes decent headway into the West Pacific. And theoretically, westerly anomalies pretty strong the whole way into February for the heart of winter, with easterly anomalies getting shunted off to the east, but still present. Let's overlay the MJO, see if my guess is correct. All right, dotted contour, there you go. Strong inactive phase of the MJO with 1, 2, 3 contours. Notice how it's been steadily, both the active and inactive phase getting stronger, followed by the active phase of the MJO with 1, 2, 3 contours as well. Not making much headway until mid-December, there you go. And then it pushes across the date line and the central part of the West Pacific. This would be a good window here for storm development. And then inactive phase follows, but westerly anomalies persist. Let's overlay the low-pass filter. So this again talks to that, the high-low pressure bias, if you will. The low-pressure bias, the solid contour here, this is it's the El Nino signal, but it's over the Indian Ocean. So relative to the Pacific, that would be La Nina, okay? And in fact, the dotted contour here, we saw it last week. We were hoping it wasn't real. It's still here and going out to the end of the model, suggesting high pressure building as we speak and getting stronger in the next contour, about the 8th of December sort of thing taking over. Now, this inactive phase of the MJO with its strong easterly anomalies, when I say it's pouring gas on the fire of La Nina, it literally is. You notice with the arrival of this inactive phase, all of a sudden the high pressure contours show up, building to 2 contours. This little one inactive phase of the MJO We'll see. But I think that's going to fuel a stronger La Nina development than what has been expected up to this point in time. Okay, and even with a good solid active phase building behind it, it just doesn't get the traction. It seems like the scale is tipped in favor of La Nina. Let's keep digging. All right, so we've talked about the development of easterly anomalies driven by the inactive phase of the MJO. That is a forecast. Well, there are easterly anomalies actually getting traction on the ocean surface as we speak. But again, that can come and go. The ocean has to respond to it in kind. So let's go take a look subsurface-wise, what's going on in the Pacific Ocean. Data from the TAO buoy array. Again, there's a series of buoys strung across this is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here, across the equator. These are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are the sensors. You get the idea. They measure subsurface water temperature. El Nino is characterized by warm water in the East Pacific, cold water in the West. La Nina, the exact opposite. We can see these are temperatures here, 30-degree isotherm, holding about where it was last week, 165 east, the 29 degrees centigrade isotherm to 180, the 28 degree to 170 west, and you know, basically the same picture as last week, suggesting warm water in the west and not nearly as much warm water in the east, suggesting some flavor of La Nina, at least oceanically in control. Now, this model, the anomalies, that's what really matters, right? This has been showing consistently much less cold water in the east and this ever-shrinking little opening for cold water to erupt or that has been erupting to the ocean surface. No change there, though this is maybe a little bit perplexing. This wasn't here, I don't think, last week. We have another model variation on it here. Let's see if we can get this a little bit bigger for you. And this shows the same thing, but what it is showing is that this pathway now that used to be the whole way out here at 160 west, now there's warm water blocking the pathway, even smaller pathway for cold water to get to the ocean's surface. And the expanse of the colder water smaller than what it has been. The question or the thought is, the active phase of the MJO just pushed south of California and created an atmospheric river, but it also set up normal or westerly anomalies on this portion of the equator south of California, right? Allowing warm water to build up, suppressing trades, basically stealing the fuel source from La Nina. Keep that in mind as we keep digging here. This is sea level anomaly data. The height of the ocean is the sphere of the ocean. You take out the waves, wind waves, tides, all that. Is it higher or lower than normal? Why does that matter? Well, if you have cold water depth, cold water contracts, and what you'll end up with is a divot on the ocean surface. If you have warm water depth, warm water expands, it displaces the water above it up, and you get a bump. All right, so what are we looking at here? This is all satellite data, by the way. The equator there, dateline there, Chile, Peru, Central America, Hawaii up here. The blues, -5 centimeter anomalies. Last week, -10 centimeter anomalies covered a big area here, suggesting a bunch of cold water at depth. All of a sudden, we're down to, and it's only 5 degrees north and south of the equator that this matters. And you see basically on the equator, a couple of 10 centimeter pockets, but much less than even the week before. The question is or the active phase of the MJO, or what's left of it that's been moving over here, dampening trade winds and muting the signal of how much cold water is at depth. We'll get more into that in a second. And then we go look at sea surface temperature anomalies. Here is our cold water upwelling signal, and it's just, again, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. And you see the signal here, the official El Nino monitoring region from 120 west to 170 west, so right in that box there. But you notice warmer than normal temperatures have built along Peru, Chile, Ecuador, and out over the equator, mainly north of the equator, muting again, the upwelling signal and the amount of cold water at the surface. But we also know that easterly anomalies are starting to build here in the inactive phase of the MJO. Little bit at a time, it's going to start working its way across the Pacific. So for right now, this looks very much favorable in terms of having a weak La Nina. The million-dollar question is, will those easterly anomalies, as they move over this area, create a massive upwelling event that then in turn kicks off or literally dumps fuel into the La Nina gas tank and allows it to intensify? That is the big question for the week and the unknown. Now, one little clue is we're looking at the 7-day sea surface temperature trend. You see cool right here on the equator, pockets of pretty strong cooling starting to develop. Is this potentially the development of easterly anomalies in this area? Way too early to know, okay? This is just a 7-day trend. A week from now, we'll have a better sense, and the week after that, a better sense. It takes 4 to 5 to 6 weeks for any one phase of the MJO to move from here over to here. So we're just at the very beginning of that process, but something to keep your eyes on. Here's another trend indicator, just raw sea surface temperature values in the Nino 1.2 region. Temperatures peaked 2 days ago. Now they're falling at 0.008 of a degree below normal, basically dead even. I mean, this is only like a 1-week window right here. You see where the temperatures have been hanging, and this is not even the official El Nino monitoring region. This is just right there by the Galapagos and Ecuador. Temperatures hovering somewhere around -1 degree, and then they started spiking with the advent of the active phase of the MJO, and then that fed the backdoor trough over California, the atmospheric river event. You get the general idea here. In the official El Nino monitoring region, again, this is just trend data, the Nino 3.4 index, temperatures worked their way up to, half a degree below normal, which is considered dead neutral. Between half a degree to 1 degree is weak La Nina, okay? And we've never really been anywhere but in that situation since, we'll say, mid-September. Here we are now mid-November. Temperatures, again, rose, but now they're starting to fall 637 thousandths of a degree below normal. So a little more than half a degree below normal, just barely back into La Nina territory. The official adjusted sea surface temperature anomaly value for the Nino 3.4 right here. Now this is for the week of November 13th, 0. Dead even. That syncs up pretty well, though, with the active phase moving over this area, easterly anomalies being suppressed, warm water starting to build a little bit, So, but you see, looking back here, we've only been in a couple of readings, one here in September, another one in October, another one here in late October. Only 3 readings officially, even in La Nina territory, and that is just for 1 week at a time. That is not much of a trend. So then we go take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index. Difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Tahiti in the Pacific, Darwin roughly in the Indian Ocean. When pressure is lower in Tahiti, the index goes negative. Well, today's value plus 21.82. And you can see it's been steadily positive for 13 or 14 days now. That's all consistent with the inactive phase of the MJO moving into the West Pacific. Prior to that, it was more or less negative, active phase moving over the Pacific. Now we're in the inactive phase. 30-day average, well, nothing, no big deal, 4.33. I mean, we got to be down at minus 12, 15, 20 to really, get one's attention. So this doesn't even really signify the inactive phase of the MJO. And where have we been for the past month? Pretty much right about where we have been. In the 90-day average, 3.7, and we're lower, pretty much lower now than we've been all month. Let's go look at a graph real quick. Here's the 30-day running SOI average mapped out. There you go. Neutral from +7 to -7, squarely in neutral territory. So, according to this, we're neither La Nina or El Nino. Interesting. So that brings us to the CFS model and its forecast for sea surface temperature anomalies in the official El Nino monitoring region, the Nino 3.4 region. Here has been the confirmed trend of where temperatures are. Here is, right about here is mid-November. We'll say temperatures at half a degree below normal. And this model consistently has just been showing that La Nina just falls off a cliff, develops really strong, and whenever you finally get to that magic point in time, it recorrects and go, well, temperatures are still normal. I'll just push it off another month. Well, that's what it's doing now, and it shows temperatures down to minus 1.25 or 1.3 degrees in January. Now, this is the raw data. The PDF corrected fixes for shortcomings, saying temperatures dropping down to minus 1.1 degrees in December and January. That's a month. Well, that's December 15th right there. That is going to take one heck of a lot of easterly anomalies and upwelling to get from here to here in a month. We'll see whether it happens. You might notice a slight tinge of incredulity or disbelief in my voice at what the CFS is projecting. And why would that be? Well, I have some other data to show you. Yes, the consensus model, all the different El Nino, La Nina models, be them either dynamic models or statistic models, and there's like 30 of them here, and their output for the month of November. Dead even is 0, and you see the range, neither El Nino or La Nina, plus half a degree to minus half a degree. I'll just do this. Let's see if I can, there we go. The green line, there it is. The statistic average, 0.3 of a degree, not even that, as we get into the peak of La Nina territory. The dynamic model, okay, a little bit stronger, there we go. 0.46 and then rising from there. Let's go inspect the actual data. This is always, so here's a list of all the dynamic models. I'm not going to drive you through all. There's the CFS model at minus 1 degree. The NASA GMAO says all down to minus 2 degrees. But you see there's a real spread. Average it all together. This says temperatures minus 5.33 going to minus 0.565 in December. That's barely in La Nina territory. Statistic models, I don't think they're as good, but they're saying minus 364 thousandths of a degree. Average all the mess together, half a degree below normal a month from now, and then we put a bow on it and call it done. Theoretically. But what does all this mean? Well, we do know that there are strong easterly winds or anomalies blowing over the Kelvin wave generation area, the West Pacific on the equator. And they are forecast to grow in coverage and strength for the next 2 weeks. The question is, will this inactive phase of the MJO, easterly wind burst, if you will, do enough to like just destroy whatever warm water is holding over the Kelvin wave generation area and over in the far West Pacific and usher in some sort of a full-blown La Nina for the next couple of months? Now, consider this also, that typically La Nina reaches its peak somewhere between now and the next 3 weeks, and then it's fighting normal climatology and the seasons and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if it hasn't done its thing in the next 3 weeks, it probably isn't going to do it. So how much legs is our La Nina going to get in the next couple of weeks? And how deep are they going to get rooted into the atmosphere? And how much is it going to change the global planetary circulation? I'd say probably not a whole lot. That said, I'm going to keep my eyes on it just the same. I mean, the models have been rock solid about this easterly wind event happening, and the CFS model kind of hints that it's going to do something in favor of La Nina. All that said, let's zoom to where we are right now. Well, supposedly we're in La Nina, and we still have storms. Yeah, it hasn't been great surf. I mean, honestly, it's been pretty bad. We were doing okay up to about a week ago, and now it's just been a mess. We'll see what happens, but relative to Hawaii, it seems like a good amount of surf is coming their way, and that pattern's just going to shift to the East Pacific as we move through the next couple of weeks. So there is hope. There is snow in the Sierra too. I don't think there's going to be a little bit more coming this week. And then after that, I think things are going to dry out for a while because, drumroll, the inactive phase of the MJO is setting up over the Pacific. Now, that can push the jet way north and drive it south over California, creating more of those backdoor fronts. But I just have a sense that that's probably not going to happen. This was probably our one big event for the next couple of weeks. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. But beyond that, are we getting into a deep La Nina? Are we going to El Nino? I don't know. I would say probably, last week we talked about the PDO being more negative than it's ever been ever. I'd say we're pretty well ingrained. There's some sort of a base state in favor of La Nina. So I think we're going to go there for a while and probably stay there. So the strategy, my personal strategy is if there's waves, I'm going surfing. I'll drop everything and get any surf I can while I can, because it is a La Nina year, and that's pretty much the way it goes. You better get it while you can. El Nino years, during a positive phase of the PDO, you can pick and choose, but this is probably not one of those years. The one last thing, because it was El Nino last year, okay, there is still adequate energy in the upper atmosphere and up at the Jetstream that maybe this will help support snow and rain production into California, at least into, let's say, mid-January or so. After that, I think we're going to start falling into a more typical normal La Nina pattern, which pushes the Jetstream north, focusing on the Pacific Northwest. All right. That is our video for this week. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the Stormsurf icon down in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Comments, questions, always welcome. And if you'd like to make a small contribution to the cause, you may hit the super thanks button down below, the heart with the $sign in it. That's it for this week. We will do it again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.